The invigilator's heels clicked like a metronome of judgment. Angela eased into her seat, bracing both palms on the desk until the ache in her lower back quieted. She'd measured her breaths all morning, in for 4, out for 4, the way the antenatal nurse taught. Her belly, round and certain, nudged the edge of the desk. In the row behind her, someone snickered. "Make way, Madonna and child," a voice whispered. Paper rustled, pens tapped, and the exam hall took its first collective breath. Angela unfolded her question booklet. The word swam, then steadied. She scribbled her name, Angela Nwori, in the neat, careful letters she'd trained into muscle memory since childhood. The ink looked too bright against the paper, like a spotlight she hadn't asked for. "Time starts, now," the invigilator announced. From the corner of her eye, Angela saw a phone tilt. A camera lens peeped over the edge of a sweatshirt. She swallowed her shame and bent over her work. The question was an essay on systemic ethics in public policy, her favorite. She formed her thesis, "Power reveals character, accountability reveals truth." Her hand moved faster, retrieving paragraphs she'd rehearsed while pacing the living room at midnight with a glass of warm milk balanced in her free hand. A jab of pain flickered beneath her ribs, nothing dramatic, just a reminder the clock inside her body ticked too. She paused long enough to press a palm to her belly. The baby flittered, as if lightly clapping from inside. "You're okay," she whispered, to herself as much as the child. Footsteps halted beside her. "Keep your eyes on your work," the invigilator said, but the words weren't for Angela. They were aimed at the girl with the tilted phone. The girl rolled her eyes and lowered it, muttering, "Whatever. It's a public service announcement." Angela kept writing. She built her argument like scaffolding, point, counterpoint, evidence, steady, precise, the way her life had been before rumor tried to collapse it. Her mind flashed to her mother, who used to press a kiss to Angela's forehead before every exam. "You were built for this, my star." Her mother hadn't lived to see this part of the story. Neither had her father. Grief nudged her, tender and sore, but Angela could not open that door today. Not with the clock racing. She turned the page and wrote faster. A bead of sweat rolled down her temple. Someone coughed. Another whisper, "If I were her, I'd have deferred. Imagine giving birth right here." Angela answered by underlining a key sentence. "Public trust depends on the courage to show up when it would be easier to hide." The baby turned again, small heels brushing her ribs, as if agreeing. 5 minutes, the invigilator called. Angela wrote her conclusion in strokes that felt like a vow. She stacked her references. She capped her pen. The whisperers had grown bored by now, returned to their own essays. Angela lifted her paper, belly and courage and thesis aligned. When the papers were collected, she stood slowly, a hand at the small of her back. A boy in a varsity jacket sidestepped to let her pass, theatrically pressing himself to the wall. Laughter snipped at her heels. On the steps outside the hall, the sky was a bruised blue threatening rain. Angela rested a hand over her belly, breathing. The phone in her bag buzzed with a message from an unknown number. No doubt another joke. But it wasn't. It was one line from a contact saved as M. "Proud of you. Keep going." Her lungs flooded with air. She typed back, "Finished. Next. Graduation list." Then the stage. 3 dots blinked, then vanished. He was back in the silence of duty. Angela squared her shoulders and stepped into the wind, unaware the next list she'd read would ignite a louder storm than any whisper in that hall. The honors list would turn the whispers into a chorus and paint a target on her back. The whiteboard outside the faculty office glowed with names and grades printed on A4 sheets. Students swarmed, murmuring in waves, laughter and disbelief sloshing from group to group. Angela arrived to a small hush, like a sudden intake of breath before a scream. Her belly announced her before her face did. She felt the hush like a cold hand on the back of her neck. "There she is," someone said. "Madam Valedictorian." Angela edged closer to the board. A boy deliberately shuffled left to block her view, then sympathetically shifted aside. The move was choreographed, performed kindness. She stepped into the gap and scanned the columns. Her finger slid down, A's and A's and the anchor of A's that had cost sleepless nights, morning nausea, and 100 private prayers. There it was. Nwori, Angela, first-class honor. Her throat tightened. She could see, for an instant, her mother's proud grin in her mind. A girl behind her snorted. How can a pregnant girl represent us? It's not a film. Maybe it is, her friend replied. Season finale. Baby on stage. The faculty secretary opened the door and called out, shortlisted candidates for valedictory address. Names will be emailed by evening. Imagine if, the girl began, then cut her eyes toward Angela and dropped her voice to a needle. If she gets it, I'll protest. Angela pretended not to hear. She stepped away from the board and sat on a low wall under a jacaranda tree. Purple blossoms littered the ground, soft as confetti. She opened her phone to write a message, to M, but deleted it. She could not say I made first class when she knew what would follow, then stand tall. He always believed she could. His faith sometimes felt heavier than her belly. Her friend Zainab arrived, breathless. Is it true? She asked, eyes bright. Angela handed her the printed list the secretary had posted online too. Zainab scanned it, squealed softly, then caught herself. I won't make a scene. But I swear if anyone says one more thing. They will, Angela said gently. It's fine. It's not. Zainab's gaze hardened. You're not a scandal. You're discipline with dimples. A boy walked by, phone in the air, narrating to a video, first-class mama. Content for days. He aimed the camera at Angela like a dart. Zainab stepped in front of it. Delete that, she snapped. Freedom of speech, he sang, spinning away. Angela breathed through the sting. She looked at the list again, wanting to soak it in before rumor bleached its joy. The line broke over her heart. First-class honor. She had balanced tutorials with clinic visits, research with baby kicks, deadlines with the emptiness of an apartment too quiet at midnight. She had done it. And the world had not given her permission. Her phone buzzed with an email. She opened it, and her hand trembled. Shortlist. Valedictory address candidates. Her name sat second on the list. Zainab read over her shoulder, gasped, then grabbed Angela's hands. You're doing it. Angela exhaled, slow and deliberate. If they choose me. They will, Zainab said. And if anyone laughs, we'll make them choke on their giggles. Angela smiled. It lasted until the faculty PR officer tapped her shoulder. If you are selected, you will use the stage responsibly, the woman said. No theatrics. No messaging. Messaging? Angela asked. You know what I mean, the woman replied, eyes dropping to Angela's belly. We represent standards. Angela felt the old fear crawl up her spine. But beneath it, something steady arose. No theatrics, no messaging, just the truth of a woman who refused to disappear. When the PR officer left, Zainab squeezed Angela's arm. They're afraid because you shine. Angela looked at the jacaranda blossoms. Then let them blink. Before anyone would clap, Angela would need a gown, one no one seemed willing to make. Angela visited 3 tailors and left each shop with the same taste in her mouth, iron and insult. At Madame F's, a measuring tape hung around a neck that dipped disdainfully toward Angela's belly. I can't waste material, F said, tapping a calculator. You'll shrink after delivery. The dress will hang. Bad advertisement. Angela kept her voice soft. I can pay. It's not money, F replied, already turning to another client. It's principle. At a second shop, the tailor laughed, eyeing Angela's figure like an equation that refused to balance. Madam, your graduation is not maternity shoot. By the third shop, Angela's feet throbbed and her patience was a thread. The tailor there shook her head, sympathetic and firm. If I sew for you, other girls will think I encourage this. This? Angela asked. School is for learning. Some things should wait, the woman said, eyes soft with belief and harm. Angela walked home under a sun that refused to blink, the shy breeze offering nothing but the smell of diesel and roasted corn. In her apartment, She shut the door and pressed her back against it. The room hummed with the refrigerator and the faraway complaint of a generator. She stared at the fabric folded on her chair, a rich blue anchor she'd saved for something important. What is more important than this? She thought. She dragged the old sewing machine from the corner. It had been her mother's, metal chipped, pedal squeaky, the needle holder missing a tiny screw she'd replaced with a hairpin. She watched 3 tutorial videos, paused them, rewound them, watched again. She measured with the tape, her belly rounding the numbers into impossible curves. She pinned the pieces on the floor and slid the scissors like a promise. Steady, she told herself. The first seam was crooked. The second got swallowed by the machine. The third began to look like hope. Angela worked until the light shifted and her lower back complained, until a quiet satisfaction kept her seated when comfort suggested bed. When she finally stood, the dress hung from the cupboard like a bright, brave idea. Imperfect, yes, but undeniably hers. She slipped it on. It hugged her shoulders, floated around her belly, and fell to her ankles with a whisper. She faced the mirror and saw not a scandal, not a cautionary tale, but a woman who'd refused to be barred from her own celebration. She twirled once, dizzy with a private kind of joy. Her phone vibrated on the table. A message from an unknown number again. Probably recycled mockery. She opened it to a grainy photo of a flight helmet and a night sky. Can't talk, Angel. But I'm coming. M. Her knees weakened. She typed back, don't risk anything. No reply. Duty swallowed the message. Thunder grumbled in the distance. Angela turned to the dress, stroked its seams, and whispered, they will not swallow me. The generator across the street coughed and died. The room fell into a soft, anticipatory dark. By morning, her family would choose which side of the stage to stand on, behind her, or against her. Angela's aunt, who had promised to fill the space her mother left, arrived with judgment arranged neatly on her face. So this is the dress, Auntie said, walking around it like a crime scene. You made it yourself. Of course. It's beautiful, Angela replied, smoothing an invisible wrinkle. It's loud, Auntie sniffed, as if begging for attention. I'm graduating, Angela said. I'll take a little attention. Auntie's lips thinned. You could have deferred. Hidden. Waited until after. But stubbornness runs in your blood. Your mother had it. It killed her. Angela inhaled sharply. That's not fair. What's unfair, Auntie countered, is asking us to sit under stares and whispers while you parade that stomach. Do you think people won't ask where is the father? What do we say? He is a ghost. He is. Angela stopped. She had promised not to say more than she should. She had promised to protect what belonged to both of them. He is away. Away, Auntie repeated, then bit down on the truth like a bitter seed. We will not attend. Your cousins will not attend. We will pray for you. From home. Angela felt it, a quiet crack. She had expected resistance. She hadn't expected the room to suddenly feel too big for one heartbeat. So I'll walk alone, she said. You chose alone, Auntie replied. We warned you about men who make promises in shadows. Angela looked at her hands. Her ring was a simple band, no diamond to explain itself to those who needed optics to believe in vows. I chose us, she said softly, hand resting on her belly. Auntie sighed, puncturing the moment with a soft hiss. We've said our piece. If you go, go quietly. Don't turn your shame into a festival. When the door closed behind her aunt, the apartment exhaled. Angela stood in the middle of it, feeling the shape of the absence press on her. She swayed once, then steadied. She opened the cupboard and took out her mother's scarf, a pale gold wrap that smelled faintly, impossibly, of lavender and old prayers. She draped it over the dress and fastened it with a pin. Her reflection looked like a promise she was finally done apologizing for. Zainab's voice burst through a call. I'm at your door in 5 minutes. We are going together. And if your aunt tries anything, I'm adopting you on the spot. Angela laughed, the sound bright and surprised. Just you and me then. And your baby, Zainab said. And your mother's spirit. That's a full entourage. Angela's eyes stung. That's enough. She ended the call and checked her bag, invitation, ID card, compact powder, water, snacks the nurse had insisted on, and a folded speech she'd written for herself, even if she never got to read it. She tucked the speech beneath the gold scarf. The intercom buzzed. For a breath, she imagined Auntie changed her mind. But the voice downstairs belonged to Zainab, singing off-key. Angela smiled and turned off the lights. Outside the apartment, the world waited with cameras. Inside the campus gate, it waited with a louder kind of cruelty. The campus gates were banners and balloons and the particular electricity of 100 families trying to occupy the same patch of joy. Fathers gripped bouquets like weapons against sentiment. Mothers adjusted caps and collars, herding children into photographs that looked like victory and relief. Angela stepped from the cab with Zainab and felt the air tighten. Heads turned. Several phones floated. It took 2 seconds for the whispers to reach her. Is she serious? She has no shame. TikTok is going to eat today. Zainab slid an arm around Angela's. Smile at the ones who matter, she murmured. Ignore the rest like mosquitoes. Angela smiled at a little boy in a tiny mortarboard who stared wide-eyed at her belly, then waved back when he waved shyly at her. She straightened the gold scarf and shifted the dress at her shoulders. A breeze lifted the hem, cool as a blessing. A group of girls in matching lashes and laughter blocked the path near the hall. One of them, Marina, whose eyebrows arched like punctuation marks, stepped forward. Bold, Marina said, looking Angela up and down. I admire the audacity. Then let me pass, Angela replied, gentle and firm. Marina's smile sharpened. Tell me, where is he? The father. Is he watching the live stream from the shadows? Zainab stepped in, jaw set. He's watching you act uncultured in public. Laughter flickered. Cameras edged closer. Security shifted uncertainly by the door, unsure whether to intervene against cruelty dressed as conversation. Angela lifted her chin. Excuse me, she said, and the tone of it, courteous as an arrow, split the crowd just enough. She and Zainab moved through. Inside the hall, the air hummed with polished speeches and the smell of flowers and floor cleaner. Portraits of former chancellors stared down with uniformly skeptical eyes. Angela found her seat number, row C, seat 12, and lowered herself carefully. The baby fluttered as if tapping a microphone. Testing, testing. On stage, the dean cleared his throat, tried a smile, and failed. Graduands, he began. Today we celebrate excellence, discipline, and the preservation of our proud standards. Zainab squeezed Angela's hand once and slipped away to the gallery where guests Saturday. Alone, Angela smoothed her dress and ran her thumb along the folded page of the secret speech. She breathed in the hall's recycled coolness, breathed out courage. The first names were called. Caps tilted. Cameras flared. Every minute, the aisle felt longer. A cough of laughter sounded somewhere behind her, the kind that wasn't about a joke. Angela's pulse thumped at her throat. She whispered to the child, "We will walk this aisle. We will not bow our heads." Her phone vibrated once against her thigh, no sound, just a tremor. She slipped it out, careful, and saw the 2-word message from M. Almost there. Angela stared. She blinked. She checked the sender twice, then tucked the phone away, heat rising to her face. Almost there. Across continents. Across duty. She pressed her hand to her belly. The baby fluttered, wild with the weather inside her. The dean paused mid-sentence, looking up toward the rear doors as a thin vibration rolled through the hall's roof, low, insistent, rising. At first Angela thought it was the sound of a storm building. Then the windows began to rattle. People stood. The murmurs sharpened into a single question. What is that? Angela did not stand. She closed her eyes and whispered, not to silence the noise, but to steady herself against the tidal shift poised to crash through the day. The ceiling above them would tremble, the laughter would die mid-breath, and every phone would swing toward the sky. The dean's opening speech melted into background hum as students refreshed their feeds. The real ceremony, for many, lived on glass. TikTok loops, Instagram stories, half-snatched captions sprinting ahead of empathy. A clip of Angela taking her seat, hand at her lower back, face calm, was already trending in the campus group chat with a sticker that read, "Main character energy." The comments were not kind. From the gallery, Zainab scanned the room like a bodyguard on a tight perimeter. 2 rows down, Marina zoomed in, whispering for effect, "Content. Gold." A boy in a maroon blazer angled his camera. "Let's ask the star for a quote," he said, and giggles spilled around him like coins on tile. He didn't approach, cowardice preferred distance, but his voice traveled. "Will the baby get a certificate too?" Laughter popped, bright and thin. Angela felt the sting, the way a paper edge slices a fingertip. No blood yet, but heat. She kept her gaze on the stage where the registrar shuffled envelopes. Her mother's scarf sat warm against her collarbone. "Steady," she told herself. "Control what you can, breath, posture, dignity." The master of ceremonies read out reminders. No air horns, no blowing vuvuzelas, no standing in aisles. As if forewarned, half the hall leaned in further, elbows ready to become tripods. The orchestra struck up a neat, cheerful march no one really heard. A familiar lecturer slid into the seat beside Angela. Dr. Ezenwa, the one who'd praised her capstone. His voice was low, meant for one heart. "You wrote the best paper I read all year," he said, eyes kind. "Noise is just weather. The work is the house." "Thank you," she whispered, and the beam of that small mercy steadied her knees. The screen behind the stage blinked awake. A banner scrolled. Presentation of degrees. The first faculty's names began. Caps bobbed. Families clapped. Babble subsided into ceremony's rhythm. But the laughter didn't stop, it shifted. Each time a name near Angela's row was called, the maroon blazer boy narrated, "Next to her. Proximity points." When one of her classmates passed, he added, "Careful, fertility is contagious." More giggles. Angela counted 4 beats of breath, then 4 again. The baby fluttered, a quick, irregular knock. "We are almost there," she murmured. The words tasted like steel and honey. "Row C, prepare," a marshal whispered down the aisle. Angela stood, smoothing her dress. Heads lifted like birds sensing movement. The maroon boy smirked into his camera. "It's time." When her name is called, the aisle will feel longer than a runway, and twice as lit by eyes. Nwori, Angela. Her name chimed through the hall, simple and irreversible. Angela stepped into the aisle, diploma queue moving like a conveyor of destinies. Her hand pressed the gold scarf at her throat. Heel, toe. Heel, toe. Don't rush. Don't shrink. The baby bumped, as if cheering. From the gallery, Zainab rose a little, just enough to catch Angela's eye. She formed the word silently, "I see you." Angela smiled back and felt her shoulders settle where courage lives. She passed Marina's row. Marina T-sked softly, a metronome of disapproval. "Bold," she repeated to her camera. "Bold and shameless." Likes tickered upward. Mid-aisle, Angela felt it, a ripple of laughter from somewhere to her left, then another to her right, as if the hall rehearsed cruelty. She focused on the registrar's table, the glossy sheen of the wood, the stack of envelopes, the water bottle sweating a ring onto a coaster. Her heel snagged against the carpet seam. Her body pitched forward a hair. The laughter sharpened. She corrected, spine straight, breath steady. The marshal at the steps extended a hand. She didn't take it. She climbed alone, each step a sentence ending in a period. On stage, the dean stood poised, the handshake factory rolling. He glanced at her belly, expression rippling, conflict, calculation, control. Cameras lifted. Some eyes softened. Others hardened. Most merely fed. Angela reached the registrar, who slid the envelope across with a neutral smile practiced for every student. Her fingers touched paper. Warmth shot through her palm. Yes, she thought. My name is on it. I put it there with every night I didn't quit. Congratulations, the registrar said, and for a second it felt like the word meant what it was supposed to mean. She turned toward the dean, ready to accept the perfunctory handshake, the photo that would live on a wall she could control. His mouth moved first. Ladies and gentlemen, he said into the mic, halting the line with a palm. Before we continue. A hush rolled forward like fog. He will replace tradition with a speech, and point it like a tool. Today, the dean began, we celebrate excellence and the values this institution holds dear, diligence, temperance, honor. His eyes skimmed the hall, then clipped back to Angela. We also remind ourselves that the stage is sacred, and not every life choice deserves applause. A murmur swirled. The marshal froze mid-step. The orchestra fumbled into silence. Angela stood 2 paces from him, envelope in hand, the light hot on her jaw. Her heart thumped, not a panic, but a gathering of force. The dean continued, voice low and deliberate. We will not turn this platform into a spectacle for those who disregard the discipline required for both scholarship and society. Someone in the gallery, say it with your chest. More laughter. Someone else, ogre, call names. Zainab's hands clenched the railing until her knuckles blanched. Sir, she called, voice steady over the tremor of outrage. Call her name like you called her GPA. Security glanced at each other, the kind of glance that asks which way the wind is blowing. A professor in the front row shifted uncomfortably, eyes cutting from Angela to the dean like a witness measuring where decency fell. Angela lifted the envelope a fraction. Dean, she said quietly, the MIC catching only air, not voice. May I collect what I earned? He blinked, then shaped his face into institutional warmth. Of course. He extended his hand at last, and she placed hers in his grip, cool, brief, transactional. Cameras flashed. The photo would be perfect, dean and graduate, smiles thin as paper. As she turned to leave the stage, the dean added, into the MIC, let this be a reminder to the younger ones. Choices have consequences. The hall hummed. A few claps, uncertain. A cough. From the doors, a faint quiver, so slight it felt imagined, brushed the air. Angela paused, eyes flicking to the ceiling. Was it thunder? The forecast had promised heat, not rain. The marshal ushered her toward the steps. She descended without touching the rail, dignity balancing on muscles memory built. Back in row C, Dr. Ezenwa leaned forward. They'll quote him online, he murmured to her shoulder blade. But it won't age well. Truth does, Angela replied, placing the envelope on her lap like something living. Offstage, the hall would push her from ceremony into performance, a gauntlet of lenses and lines she didn't agree to. A volunteer photographer intercepted her at the aisle's end. Smile, he said brightly, already clicking. Hold the certificate up, chin down, yes, like that. Angela lifted the envelope and bared her teeth in a practiced curve. Flash. Flash. The photographer lowered his camera, softened. For what it's worth, he added, low, my mom had me in her final year. She says her degree and I arrived on the same day. Angela's smile turned real, then trembled. Tell her thank you for finishing, she said. He nodded and moved on, hustled by a coordinator with a clipboard. In the shadow of a pillar, Angela slipped aside, letting the stream of gowns and grins flow around her. She opened the envelope. Bachelor of Public Policy. Her name looked right in the formal font. She traced it with a fingertip that shook harder than she expected. A tear slid before she could catch it. She wiped it, laughed under her breath, shook her head at herself. Footsteps. A custodian in a navy uniform paused nearby, pushing a mop bucket with a squeak. She offered Angela a tissue without comment, eyes tender. My daughter graduated last year, the woman said. The world spoke nonsense about her too. Now she hires them. Thank you, Angela managed. Drink water, the woman advised. And don't answer every dog barking. From the gallery, Zainab fought her way down the steps, every inch a force field. Hey, she said, breathless. You did it. You looked like law and poetry got married. Angela laughed properly this time. Save me a seat for the rest of this circus. Always, Zainab said, looping their arms, pulling her back toward row C. They hadn't gone 5 paces when a boy with a ring light stepped into their path. Interview, he asked. What's your message to girls who think they can? Zainab moved between them. Her message is, make room. Now move. He backed off, affronted. Freedom of press. Earn it, Zainab shot back. They reached row C as the band recovered and the next cluster of names rose. Angela lowered into her seat and exhaled everything she had been holding. Then, from outside the hall, a low, distant sound rolled like a drumbeat discovering its own pulse. Heads tilted, tiny as birds. The floor didn't shake, not yet. But the windows, faintly, hummed. Zainab's brow pinched. Hear that? Angela lifted her mother's scarf to her lips, tasting lavender and old courage. Her phone warmed in her palm, no message, just memory. Almost there. The final insult would arrive before the noise grew, a last lash of cruelty just as the sky began to split. They called her section for a group photograph near the stage steps. Graduates clustered, jostling for the front row, adjusting caps, bargaining inches of spotlight. Angela joined the edge, content to be a border. Marina's voice cut across the clatter. Front and center, Mother Mary, she announced, loud enough for echo. Let's show the world our new departmental mascot. Laughter detonated. Not everyone. Enough to sting. A security guard cleared his throat but didn't move. The photographer hesitated, then raised his camera anyway. Work is work. The maroon blazer boy lifted his phone higher, broadcasting, departmental family photo. Baby bump included. Zainab stepped forward, voice calm and surgical. What's your own GPA, broadcaster? He smirked. Content creators' GPA is engagement. Then engage with this, Zainab said, pointing at Angela's certificate. First class. Spell it without autocorrect. Some chuckled. Some looked away, embarrassed. Marina's smile faltered, then sharpened into a blade. She cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, since she's so proud, where is the father? The echo hit rafters and fell on faces. The hall held its breath, half shocked, half thrilled to see how far the line could stretch. A bead of silence. Then a few voices chimed, ugly harmony. Where is the father? A chant forming. Angela felt the words land on her skin and try to burrow. She remembered Auntie's prediction, they will ask, and felt the smallest tremor of vindication. Not joy. Certainty. She lifted her certificate. Not like a shield but like a fact. She smiled, not the brittle one, the real one that says I know something you don't. Right here, she said quietly, to no one and to everyone. Her hand dropped to her belly. Right here. A girl in the back lowered her phone. A professor cleared his throat, shame sifting his posture. The photographer, moved by something he'd remember later, said, on 3. The group arranged themselves as if memory could still be edited into kindness. 1, 2. The air above the hall thumped. Not thunder. The kind of sound that grips metal and makes it sing. Windows rattled in their frames. Heads jerked up. Cameras swung from faces to ceiling in a clumsy, reverent tilt. The chant died mid-syllable, chopped clean by awe. Outside, a wind began to roar that wasn't weather at all. Angela didn't move. She turned her face toward the sound, eyes closing for half a heartbeat. When she opened them, Zainab's mouth was a perfect O, hands flying to her cheeks, joy already flooding her eyes like she'd known all along but hadn't dared to name it. The roof would tremble, dust would whisper from rafters, and a military helicopter would drop into view like an answered prayer. The first thump hit the roof like a giant heartbeat. Another followed, closer, heavier, until every metal beam learned the rhythm. Window panes quivered, flower arrangements shivered. Mortarboards rattled on heads that tilted in unison toward the sky. What is that? Someone whispered, or elbowing fear. Security grabbed radios. Unidentified aircraft, North Quadrant, stand by. The orchestra put down their instruments, listening with their eyes. Angela didn't stand. She closed her hand over her mother's scarf and let the sound paint electricity across her skin. The baby kicked once, decisive, as if recognizing family. From the gallery, Zainab clapped both hands to her mouth. Her gaze cut to Angela, then to the ceiling, then back, hope flooding so fast it looked like light. Outside, a shadow slid over the quadrangle, sleek, dark, predatory, and purposeful. Dust lifted from the lawn in trembling halos. The sound swelled until it lived in bone. The dean stepped back from the podium, blinking into the brightness searing through the high glass. His polished speech shrank to the size of a pocket. The roof vent hummed, banners trembled. The university crest watched like a witness. Skids would kiss grass in front of the graduation hall, and the day would change its name. The rear doors blew open on a gust of rotor wash. Warm air, grass-scented and loud, rolled through the hall like a drumline. Graduates broke rank, families rushed alleys, phones held high on outstretched arms. A child squealed, a grandmother crossed herself, a cameraman whispered, "Is this a film set?" "Back! Stay back!" a marshal shouted, voice thin against the thunder. Rumors sprinted. "It's the governor. It's a proposal. It's the army. It's trouble." Zainab's eyes never left Angela. "It's him," she breathed, voice torn between joy and disbelief. "It's him, it's him, it's him." The dean tugged at a security officer's sleeve. "This is irregular. Shut the doors," he ordered, but his words arrived second to spectacle. The doors refused to be shut against a sky that wanted in. Students poured onto the steps, gowns lofting like sails. The maroon blazer boy live-streamed breathlessly. "Guys, you're not ready. Wait, oh my God." Angela stood at row C, steady as a lighthouse. She smoothed her dress once, tucked the gold scarf tighter. Her pulse slowed, not sped, as if the noise organized her, as if every insult she'd swallowed had trained her for this volume of truth. Outside, the helicopter's skids sank a kiss into the lawn. Grass flattened. Dust rose. The machine settled into an authoritative purr. The side door would slide open, and boots would find earth with the certainty of a promise kept. Rotor wind whipped the jacaranda blossoms into purple confetti. Banners snapped taut, letters stuttering with each gust. Gowns flapped, faces squeezed into delighted winces. The university flag lifted and bowed like it recognized rank. The helicopter crouched on the field like a black stallion, rotors chopping air into a gleaming halo. Along its flank, an emblem, an eagle, a serial that meant duty, not stunt. Through the side window flashed the glint of a visor, the suggestion of a jaw set to mission. "Clear the perimeter." Security finally found their voice, linking arms to create a corridor from the steps to the grass. The crowd obeyed, partly from instruction, mostly from reverence. Angela moved without rushing, Rosie emptying around her like a tide parting for rock. The scarf snapped once in the wind. She caught it with one hand and smiled, at gravity, at fate, at the absurdity of happiness arriving on a rotor. Zainab elbowed through the swell and planted herself at the aisle's mouth, an anchor for later tears. The helicopter's door slid back with a metallic sigh that sounded like at last. Boots appeared. Polished. Familiar. Unmistakable. He would step out carrying his helmet under his arm and the weight of distance in his eyes. He came down the skid in measured strides, tall, dark-skinned, crisp in Air Force dress blues despite the dust, flight gloves tucked into a belt, helmet under his left arm. Sun struck the insignia on his chest. Captain M. Okafor. A patch above his heart read a single word. Courage. The rotor wind pressed the uniform to his frame. The crowd pressed silence to their tongues. He paused at the foot of the skid, lifted his chin toward the flag, and snapped a salute that cracked the air into attention. A few veterans in the audience reflexively stood and saluted back, eyes sudden with memory. Then he turned to the hall. Even at a distance, Angela could see the tiny micro-expressions she knew better than her own. How his jaw unclenched when he found her, how his eyes softened from mission hard to home soft, how a grin threatened and lost to discipline. A security officer hustled toward him. Hands up. Michael leaned in, spoke a few words too quiet for the crowd. Whatever he said loosened the officer's shoulders. The corridor held. The dean stepped forward, searching for authority and finding awe. "Captain," he began, voice quavering despite himself, "this is With respect, sir," Michael said, gentle but immovable, "I'm here for my wife." A single sentence, clean as a blade. A ripple moved through the crowd, a gasp, a murmur, 1,000 recalculations colliding at once. Marina's phone dipped. The maroon blazer boy forgot to narrate. Michael began to walk. Not to the podium. Down the aisle cut through bodies and opinions, straight toward row C and the woman who had earned a degree while he flew night after night over landscapes that taught men the meaning of small. He wouldn't stop at her row, he would take the stage from the story and hand it back to the person it belonged to. Angela stepped into the corridor without being invited, because love doesn't wait for protocol. Wind combed fingers through her scarf. Sunlight layered gold along her cheekbones. For a heartbeat, there was no hall, no chorus, no dean. Just two people closing distance through air heavy with what they'd both carried. Michael halted one step from her and, in full view of every lens, brought his right hand up in a precise salute. Not to the institution, not to rank, but to the woman who finished what she started when quitting would have made fewer headlines. "Permission to come home, he said, voice breaking on the last word. Angela laughed and cried in the same breath. "Denied," she teased, eyes burning. "Home never left." The crowd exhaled as if a spell released them. Michael dropped the salute, went to one knee, careful, reverent, not performance but worship, and rested his palm against the curve of her belly. He closed his eyes, kissed the gold scarf where it crossed their child. "Captain to baby," he said, voice trembling into a chuckle. "This is your father. Sorry for the turbulence. We made it." Zainab sobbed openly, slapping the air like applause. Strangers cried without knowing why. Even the photographer lowered his camera for a second to just see. Michael rose, took Angela's left hand, and slid his dog tags into her palm. "Keep this till I'm back on the ground for good," he said. The chain pooled like liquid silver against blue anchor. He turned to the dean, respectful even now. "Sir, pardon my arrival. We were wheels up at 0400 on a mercy run. I requested a detour to attend my wife's graduation. Command cleared a 5-minute set-down." He lifted his wrist, the watch face gleamed. 3 minutes left. The dean, who had spoken about standards a half-hour earlier, found his throat working around a different script. "Congratulations," he managed. "Both of you." He extended a hand. Michael shook it. Angela didn't need it. Phones lifted again, not as weapons but as witnesses. Hashtags wrote themselves. #pregnant graduate, #soldier husband, #courage on stage. The campus livestream groaned under sudden traffic spikes. Somewhere beyond the gates, a street vendor watching on a borrowed phone started crying into his napkin wrapper and didn't know how to explain it to the line waiting for buns. Angela looked at Michael, at the baby under her palm, at the hall that had learned a new definition of spectacle. "Walk me the last steps," she asked. He offered his arm. "Always." They took 4 together, hers slow and certain, his precise and protective, back toward the stage that had felt like a courtroom and now looked like a homecoming. The registrar, eyes shining, held up a camera. "One more for the record." Angela nodded. Michael stepped half a pace behind her, as if framing her with his presence, not overshadowing but amplifying. The shutter clicked. Within minutes, the clip would rocket beyond campus walls, turning jeers to cheers, rewriting the dean's speech in the court of a million hearts, and setting the stage for redemption. The hall, moments ago a courtroom, became a stadium. Cheers detonated from the gallery to the back doors. Even the orchestra, stunned into silence, found a triumphant chord and held it like a sunrise. On the steps, strangers hugged strangers. Phone screens glowed like fireflies, each a window broadcasting the same scene. A soldier on one knee, a graduate glowing in blue anchor, a baby bump crowned with a kiss. Across campus, dorms emptied. Students sprinted toward the quadrangle, drawn by the thundering blades and a rumor that felt like redemption. In the canteen, the chef leaned over the counter, tears fogging his glasses. A street vendor at the gate stopped bagging buns mid-sale, whispering, "God, a beg," as he watched the livestream buffer and bloom. Hashtags hatched and swarmed. #Angela walked, #Captain Courage, #pregnant and powerful, #Loveland. The maroon blazer boy's tone shifted in real time. His caption edited itself from snark to awe. Marina's comment section filled with callouts, "Apologize. Delete your mockery. Do better or don't speak." On stage, Michael checked his watch, duty's drum still beating beneath the music of the moment. He leaned to Angela, voice soft. 60 seconds. Angela nodded, breath steady, eyes brighter than the house lights. She turned toward the dean. The man who had tried to set the tone now wore the look of a conductor whose orchestra had chosen a different symphony and played it better. The dean lifted the microphone, swallowed, and faced the hall. He began, then stopped, the sentence collapsing under a weight he had not carried before. He would choose between pride and repair, live on every phone in the city. The dean held the mic, and for once, words did not rush to rescue him. The audience, ferociously alert, waited. He looked at Angela, in her handmade gown, at Michael, insignia bright, jaw set, at the crowd, no longer hungry for blood, hungry for grace. I spoke of standards, he said finally, voice stripped of varnish. I forgot the greatest one, compassion. He turned to Angela. Miss Nwori, he corrected himself, flushing. Mrs. Okafor, you honored this institution with excellence I tried to reduce. I apologize. A stunned murmur, then applause that sounded like rain breaking a heat wave. Zainab wiped her face and whooped without decorum. The custodian in navy uniform clapped until her palms stung. The dean stepped back from the mic. If you would, say a word. Angela moved up, gold scarf lifting in the rota wind. She adjusted the mic, gaze sweeping over the same faces that had measured her worth by rumor. I came to take a certificate, she said, voice clear. Instead, I received a lesson from life. Some storms arrive to wash dirt away, not drown you. Cameras leaned in. Hearts leaned closer. I studied public policy, she continued, because I believe rules shape lives. But without mercy, rules become cages. To the girls who wrote me in secret this year, those who thought shame would swallow them, hear me, you are not a headline. You are a whole story. Finish. A wave of sound, cheers, sobs, the orchestra adding a trembling string under her words. Angela glanced back. Michael tapped his watch. 30, he mouthed, apologetic. She smiled at him, then returned to the crowd. I will keep walking. I hope we all do, with less pointing and more offering of hands. She stepped away from the mic. Tears would fall from unexpected eyes, the loudest critics learning how salty regret tastes. Marina lowered her phone, fingers trembling like someone who had been holding a weapon too long. Eyelashes clumped with tears she didn't bother to hide. The words came out small. I was wrong, she whispered, to no one in particular, to everyone at once. Beside her, the maroon blazer boy ended his stream mid-sentence. He scrolled to his earlier posts and watched his own smirks backlit by ignorance. A muscle jumped in his cheek. Delete, he muttered, then typed a caption that felt like penance. I mocked. I learned. I'm sorry. Down by row C, Dr. Ezenwa clapped in measured strokes, the way a man claps at a sunrise he knows he didn't earn. The custodian who'd offered tissue swiped both cheeks and smiled so wide it broke the map of her day. Security, braced for chaos, found themselves standing at attention, for love. Zainab, a wet hurricane, hugged a stranger so hard his mortarboard fell off. We're fine, she laughed through tears, picking it up and fanning his face. We're all fine. Michael's chest rose on a deep breath. He kissed Angela's forehead. Time, he said. A groan moved through the crowd, only 5 minutes. The hall had fallen in love with a moment and wanted custody. But duty has its custody too. Michael faced the dean, offered a final salute, then turned to the crowd and did something unplanned. He lifted Angela's hand and raised it like a champion's. The roar nearly peeled paint. Zainab thrust the dog tags back at Angela. Wear them, she insisted, fastening the chain around her friend's neck with fumbling hands. Let them see the name you carry and the one you made your own. Angela nodded, eyes shimmering. Victory would not be a speech or a pose, it would be the walk she took next, and the city would chant it with her. Walk with me, Angela whispered. Michael offered his arm, she looped hers through. Together, they took the aisle, not against laughter now, but through thunderous applause that rose and broke and rose again. Students slapped the backs of seats as drums. Parents cried without shame. Professors stood, some saluting, some crossing hearts they'd forgotten. At the foot of the steps, Angela turned and lifted her certificate high. 1,000 shutters blinked. The orchestra finally found the song they'd wanted all along and let it fly. For a suspended second, the hall looked like a painting of triumph. Blue ankara, gold scarf, dog tags flashing, a soldier's steady profile, a crowd remade by empathy. Angela faced the MIC one last time. "For the record," she said, smiling, "this gown fits." Laughter broke like glass into glitter. The dean laughed too, this time as a man allowed into his own humanity. Michael guided her down the steps, across the temporary corridor to the lawn where the helicopter crouched like a patient beast. Rota Wash tugged at fabric and hair and flowers. He cupped her cheek, eyes mesmerizing every freckle, every aftershock of joy. "Be safe," she said. "Be brilliant," he replied. He slid his helmet on. The visor dropped, the warrior replaced the husband, but only on the outside. They threaded their fingers once more, 5 points of contact, 5 borrowed minutes, then separated with a promise that felt stronger than any distance. He climbed the skid. She stepped back, scarf snapping, a queen in borrowed wind. The liftoff would write itself across the sky, and the internet would write it onto a million hearts before the rotors cleared the roofline. The helicopter rose, heavy at first, then light, dust spiraling into a halo, jacaranda confetti swirling like blessings. The crowd tilted their faces up, mouths open, as if they could climb into the sky on or alone. Angela kept her hand on her belly until the machine became a dark bird and the sound became memory. By dusk, the clip had outrun geography. Newsrooms flagged it as the graduation that broke the internet. A morning show in London played the salute on loop, a station in Nairobi shouted out Mrs. Okafor, a pastor in Atlanta preached on courage and grace with screenshots for slides. Brands posted congratulations, charities messaged partnerships. A scholarship foundation invited Angela to pursue graduate studies with a full ride. The university's social accounts pinned an apology and a photo. Angela midlift, certificate high, scarf flying, a new crest. Marina sent a voice note. "I'm ashamed. I'm learning. If you'll let me, I'd like to help with your Women in School project." The maroon blazer boy volunteered his platform to amplify applications rather than gossip. The custodian's daughter called her mother and said, "I want to donate my first paycheck to a student fund. Put Angela's name on it." In the quiet of her apartment, silence settled like balm. Zainab snored on the couch, a loyal guard dog exhausted by joy. Angela sat at the table, certificate propped against a vase of flowers she didn't remember receiving. She opened her laptop and began drafting a blueprint, Finish Anyway, a small foundation for students navigating pregnancy, loss, and the long mile of finishing. Policy, yes. People first. Her phone buzzed, a grainy photo from the cockpit. Michael's gloved hand forming a heart against a rectangle of sunset. Home soon, the caption read. Tell our baby the sky clapped for you today. Angela pressed the dog tags to her lips. The baby fluttered. She laughed, fresh tears, no sorrow in them. Outside, the city hummed, newly tender. What began as mockery had become a map, for girls who would not disappear, for boys learning how to show up, for institutions humbled into humanity. And when the next ceremony came, a new banner would hang across the hall, not a rule, but a reminder, honor finishes. Compassion crowns. The story ends on paper, but its echo will be the footsteps of those who, seeing her walk, decide to finish theirs. The end.